Welcome back to Tech That's Changing Everything. Really excited today to have two more guests. They are Lynne Watson and Lindsey from our HR team. So welcome to Tech That Changes Everything, both of you. Good to have you here. So we're going to talk today about tech and how it's changing the world of work, as we do. And, we hear a lot in the press about this impending Armageddon where machines are going to take over all the jobs. But I want to sort of get your views on that and think about whether there's a different perspective of looking at this situation. So, Lynne, I'm going to come to you first. Give us your sort of opening thoughts on that broad question.
I mean, I think the idea of it being scary is right. So I think there's a right to feel anxious because it's change and you see it everywhere. In fact, I was watching the one show, was it one show? No, it was the Good Morning Britain, and they had a robot on that was showing how technology was advancing, and it was basically saying that within 10 years, everyone will have someone in their house taking over the caring responsibilities for adults who need extra care. So yeah, that sort of thing can be quite scary and quite worrying. But in the same token, I'm long enough in the tooth and old enough in my own career to know that I've experienced that sort of change along the way. I mean, when I first started working, I was running around taking memos to people. That was my job, was to take people to memos. There was no email. There was no PCs on desks. So I know that as humans, we survive this type of quick change, and that I know that we because we fundamentally want to learn as humans, that I think prepares us for it. So scary, but something I know that we've got the resilience to cope with.
Yeah. So you were the human email system.
I was.
Organisation. I always think that, it's funny when you look back and you think, we used to have, we now have computers on every desk, but we used to have ashtrays and no computers. So things do change.
And we can change.
Yeah. What about your thoughts, Lindsey, on that opening question?
I think the most scariest thing is not to be thinking about what it means for you as an individual and your family.
Yeah.
And think of it as a mindset of what is the opportunity, what's the benefit. And I think there are lots and lots of benefits to it. And I remember when I started, I worked for Demon Internet, and we were the first people to have dial-up. And I had a big box in my home, and I plugged in a telephone cable, and it went and there we were on the, talking to people at work on a laptop. And now when I think about it, I'm on my phone, I'm on my iPad. I think, change is coming, and the most important thing to think about is how can I benefit from it? Because I do believe we can all benefit from it if we go in with a positive mindset.
Yeah. So we'll probably get onto some of that opportunity as we go through our conversation today. I mean, Lindsey, coming back to you, why is this subject important to you personally?
So for me, like many organisations, we're growing. And I look around at the scarcity of skills, and I look around some of the demographic data. So for example, the birth rate is the lowest it's been since 1977. So technology will help us close that gap. So for me, if you're in my team, one of the challenges that I often give is how do you use that technology to create capacity in your day to do more interesting work? And I think that's the mindset that we need. And it is scary, and I'm often intimidated. I rely on my team to help me with it. But I'm really passionate about it because I think it creates opportunity and capacity for people to do different things, to learn different things, to support their colleagues more effectively. So I think it's a really valid tool to help organisations and people grow.
I mean, it sounds like you're saying it can be quite energising then.
I think it can, because if you can take the time to use some of this technology, and it smooths the tasks that very often get to the bottom of our inbox, and the technology will help with that. Or if you're like me and don't really like spreadsheets, I'm a people person, not a numbers person, then the technology really helps me with doing some of those tasks that perhaps I have to do that are not my bench strength, which then creates capacity for me to do more interesting things.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that we all try to think about how we can use it in small ways, because small ways, 15 minutes on this task, 20 minutes on that task, half an hour on that task, and very quickly you're building additional hours that you can do either to develop yourself, to work with your colleagues, maybe support your mental health.
Yeah.
So there's lots of opportunities on how we can use that time for the benefit of the organisation and ourselves.
Yeah. Brilliant. What about you, Lynne? Are you people or spreadsheets?
I'm definitely that spreadsheets. Anyone who knows me, I think I would probably build on what Lindsey said. That whole idea of spending our time using human intelligence and allowing artificial intelligence to take away the grind, and that the richness of the human factor, and that, if you like, that partnership. Rather than one replacing the other, or one being better than the other, or humans will always be, at the heart of everything. And the idea that we get more time on those types of things to really use our human intelligence and allow the kind of day-to-day grind stuff to be taken away. And from an organisational point of view, organisations who harness that and use it in the right way, I think will be ahead of the game, to be honest. So that combination of human intelligence with artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So you started talking there, and Lindsey mentioned a bit as well about the organisational benefits of technology. What do you think is going to be the impact on organisations like Thales from the just more and more tech as we go into the future?
I mean, it's interesting. About 7 or 8 years ago, I asked my son came in for some work experience, and I asked him to draw the world of tomorrow. And if you look back on what he drew 10 years ago, and Lindsey knows the picture very well, he talked about online collaboration. He talked about virtual reality, all things that for me and us at that time were like emerging things that probably children did in games. And he was bringing the technology of Minecraft or gaming into the working world, where you sat in a headset, you talked with. This is all before COVID was the norm for this next generation that was coming through. And I think if organisations can harness that and get the right level of creativity, the right space, because actually that ability to problem solve quickly, the ability to get access quickly, to have access to tools that take that give them the data quickly, that analyse that data for them. You can see that the speed of decision making, the speed of collaboration, all of these things are real positives for the workforce and organisations in general, and particularly for Thales, that ability to react quickly, make decisions quickly. All of these technologies really help us with that.
Yeah.
One of the downsides of that for me is it can be quite intimidating. There's so much out there. It's like, how do I find the things that are going to be useful to me? What are the things that are not useful to me? To me, that's a big challenge as well.
Yeah. Well, we will definitely get on to how we navigate some of those challenges about how to interact with some of the digital tools and things. Lindsey, what do you think are some of the skills that people are going to need to have in the future, or behaviours? What do you think will be important for employees in Thales?
So I think this is always a really interesting question. And I think, Lynne's mentioned the human skills. I never use soft skills. Human skills is the language that I choose. But I think things around curiosity, collaboration, problem solving, the types of skills, learning agility, these are the types of skills, I think, which will enable people to maximise the technology and then invest their time in those thinking tasks. And I think for a lot of people, that's quite a big shift, and it can be quite intimidating. But actually, I think we've all got really amazing human skills, and some of us have lost some of those skills because of the way that organisations are run and the things that we're asked to do and the way we're asked to be very task-driven. And what I'm really hopeful about is in the future that will shift back to people having the opportunity to use their intellectual capability and the breadth of that creativity and problem solving in a different way, because the technology will be managing some of the tasks that traditionally have stopped us being able to do that.
So I suppose, I mean, we're back to opportunity again, aren't we? That, some of the grind is taken away so that we can focus on some of the more challenging and more stretching things.
Yeah, and I think it's really challenging because I'm like Lynne. I tend to think, well, we can do more interesting things. But for some people, what I might consider the grind is how they've built their career and what they have, their efficiency and effectiveness and their ability to manage those tasks really successfully is intrinsic to their feeling of success and contribution. So I think there's a lot for organisations to think about how we help people understand that their self-worth is not necessarily tied to the job that they do today, but maybe the impact and value that they can have if we can free up some of that time. But I do think there is a big role for organisations to play in helping people with that.
Yeah, God, that's such an interesting perspective, because it's like an identity question. Lynne, what are your thoughts on the skills and behaviours that were needed?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Lindsey said, and I really like that point, actually. It resonated with me, that idea that someone gets their value from being task efficient, or being the person who knows everything or knows where everything is, and you could see how someone could feel their loss of value from doing that. So I find that very interesting. From a skills point of view, I think echo Lindsey's curiosity, leading change, creating environments where change. So from a leadership point of view, that ability to create an environment where people are curious, create an environment where people feel they can make mistakes. So there's a leadership challenge in all of this as well, I think, to try and create the right type of culture and space for people to learn and grow.
Yeah. So, I mean, leaders in particular then, what sort of change leadership skills do you think that leaders need to be focusing on to support their teams through this change?
So I think there's it'll probably be the age-old skills, really, from a leadership point of view, but there's probably more emphasis on allowing, actually role modelling themselves on being a learner, being curious, adapting some of the new tools and technologies. Not all of our leaders are in a place where they want to learn the new technologies because they've maybe got someone else who does things for them, or they've got other. But actually embracing some of these changes, I think, would be something that's going to be a challenge for some. But I also think the true and tested leadership behaviours, like setting a clear vision, creating the right space, listening to what feedback is, but again, most importantly, role modelling that you are embracing these types of changes yourself, I think is really important.
Yeah. So it feels like, tech is changing, but human beings, we're not really changing. These are the same skills that leaders have needed to have for, bygones and bygones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So, Lindsey, it sounds like we might feel anxious about the future. We might feel a bit of discomfort, but what we really need to do is lean into the change. Is that right?
Yeah, I feel really passionate that the best way to add value to create the space for your teams is to lean into the opportunity. And I think just sort of going back to what Lynne was saying about those traditional leadership skills, I think we still have many leaders who pride themselves on the output and the task. And actually what we're talking about is how I describe the work of leadership, which is spending more time talking about your people, their development, their talent, how you're going to move them, how you're going to grow them, how you create the right container for them, how you make positions more fluid, which can be tricky in an organisation like ours, which likes its structure. But actually, a lot of the roles that are going to be available in the next 10 years are not written. So what we actually need to be doing is to be more fluid with people who we believe have got that potential and are choosing to lean in, to help them understand that actually moving sideways and rather than moving upwards could benefit them in the long term. Because, very often people say to me, well, I want to be the chief operating officer. And I say, well, in 10 years' time, are you sure the role is going to be the role that you want? Because it might not be as it is today. And I think really, as a leader, you have to open people's eyes to building core capabilities to keep themselves current and modern, rather than a linear approach to developing skills and capabilities. And that takes more effort, I think, as a leader than actually focusing on the non-leadership tasks, which is traditionally we're measured on. So it's quite a shift for leaders.
It felt like when you started there, that where you started in that answer was about, actually leaders may have to spend more time intentionally connecting. Perhaps, is that right?
Yep, connecting with their people, understanding their people, and also thinking about where they're going to take their business and function and what they need for the future, not in the talent review cycles we would have in Thales, which is 12 months to 18 months, but in 3 years' time and 5 years' time. I think leaders are going to become much more critical in the long-term protection of an organisation, because if they're not looking 3, 5 and 10 years, then actually, when you look at the data, lots of companies from 10 years ago no longer exist. And yes, Thales is a wonderful organisation. It's modern, it's technical. However, we can't afford to take our eye off the ball when everything is changing at quite a critical pace, I think, and helping our people keep momentum rather than feeling like they're standing still is, incumbent on us all as an organisation.
Yeah. And so let's get into that then a bit, Lynn. So if I'm an employee and I'm feeling a bit, like I'm looking at this change and I'm thinking, yep, feel a bit anxious about it, but I really want to lean into this discomfort and I really want to learn. Like, what's available for me?
I would say learn. You took the word that I was going to say. And to not be afraid to ask questions. I mean, I'm the first person to say, where did you find that? What does that do? I'm not ashamed of the fact that there's no one knows everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not ashamed of the fact that sometimes you have to ask the question. So I would be curious. There's lots of learning that's out there. We've got our digital pathway, we've got digital skills, we've got all sorts of really good learning programs, pathways that are available to our people. But it starts with a curiosity and a feeling that it's safe to say, I don't know, or I'm feeling confused, or where did you find that, or, feeling, and that's down on us to create a space for that. So for me, it's that ability to put your hand up and be curious and ask questions.
Yeah, brilliant. And Lindsey, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what can people expect Thales to support them with?
So I think in some ways, Thales sometimes gets a bit of a rough ride because culturally we're very financially driven, which it makes us a success. But on the not so good side of that, it means that we're watching every hour that everybody works. And actually, if you think about a modern workplace, learning needs to be built in every day to everything you're doing. And so micro learning, actually taking time in your working day to look at what the Thales Academies are offering, looking at something that you may feel would develop you, talking to your line manager about it, talking to someone in my team about it if you need some help and advice. These are all things that are incumbent on us as individuals. And I think what is equally scary, as well as the tech, is that we now really believe that as an individual, it's our responsibility and our employees' responsibility to drive their own learning. And that is quite a change for lots of people in our organisation. And I think, it's a difficult thing to do, but it's really important that as an individual, we are looking at what's available. We're choosing what we think is going to help us, maybe something else we're interested in. and getting that support to be able to do it. But we do not have a lack of learning opportunities in this organisation. In some ways, it can be a bit tricky finding the right one. It's the opposite, a bit Lynne was talking about. There's so many options. But I think as a leader, it's incumbent on us to give permission to our teams and raise the level of expectation that we expect them to be doing it as a leader, as part of their normal working day. And that, again, takes time to work through, I think. And it's difficult.
Yeah. So you're saying, as this organisation, as I look at it, you know, compared to lots of the organisations that I go into, I mean, you're doing some fantastic things. That's really obvious. There's loads and loads of stuff out there for people. So it sounds like Lindsey's saying, you know, carve out some time, you know, be curious and, you know, talk to your line manager about it. Would you agree with that, Lynne? Anything else that people could do?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely agree with it. And if you're a line manager, I would say the same to you. You know, carve out time. Going, this is not something that you do to other people. This is about us all educating and learning together.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would be, if you're a line manager of line managers, you're asking your line managers, what are they learning? How are they discovering it? So that we're all holding each other accountable for our continuous learning, particularly in this topic. And what I've realised is that when people do engage in these topics, there's a hunger that starts, you know, it goes from being, I think I'll just ask ChatGPT a very small question, to it being like, why doesn't it do this? Suddenly, you know, the hunger and I want the next version and I want the next version. And so if you can just create that little bit of hunger, people will bite. And the next thing you know, it's integrated into people's life. I take it back to the Minecraft, you know, like scenario where you've got that idea that people can problem solve creatively over line, which we couldn't even have dreamed about before COVID. And now we're firmly in that place that our children were doing 10 years ago.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. It's taking one small step, I suppose. So can I put you on the spot, Lynne, and then Lindsey, I'm going to put you on the spot as well, so you can prepare while Lynne answers this one. So, like, what's the tech or the digital question? You know, what's the thing that you're curious about learning? What are you prioritizing?
So, I, like Lindsey, I'm not a numbers person particularly. So therefore, I've been really enjoying taking some of my numerical challenges or things where I'm assimilating a lot of data and running that through AI so that I can get quickly assimilated. I'm getting great use from dashboards, digital dashboards. You know, I like patterns in numbers. I like the analytical outputs of numbers, but I don't like the generation of the numbers. So for me, one of the things that over the last 2 or 3 years that I've got so much more from predictive analytics and generative AI, where you're getting things assimilated quickly. So that idea of taking data and telling me a story about it without me spending hours and hours trying to get there. But what I also realised that it takes the human intelligence to ask the right question.
Yeah.
And that is just, you know, because to start with you go, whoa, wait a minute here. This knows too much. And then you realise, well, hold on a minute, it doesn't actually until you start really seeing what's in there. So, but that idea of giving me that ability to assimilate really quickly is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Sounds like you do what I do sometimes and start having a bit of an argument with your generative AI and forget that it's not actually a real human being behind that. It's so interesting.
And I find it a wee bit sometimes a little bit too positive for a Scottish person.
That's a great point, Lynne. That's what it says.
A little bit too, you're like, no, it wasn't.
You need to ask it for a Scottish person.
I do. Certainly with
matter of time. Lindsey, what about you? What are you leaning into?
So I like Lynne. So my grandson was born with duplicated chromosomes, and I've used ChatGPT to help me gather information where I feel like I'm not getting a good answer from the doctors.
Yeah.
And it will pull stats, their own stats, which you can present to them, which has been quite helpful. So I've used it in that way at work. Like Lynne, I like to feed it lots of papers and then talk about my role, what I'm thinking about, and asking it to make some recommendations of what I should care about as a first pass. And I think that can be really helpful, particularly if there's a lot in our line of work. There's lots of published papers. Some of them are very consistent, some are inconsistent. So actually really getting it to look at that and prompting is key, can be really helpful to increase your pace. But I suppose if I had one piece of advice for someone, I would be saying, what's the first thing that AI could do for me to make my life easier so I could do something that I care about? And whether that's at work or at home, that's how I would start.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that story. So it's like, link it to your passion, link it to something that energizes you. Is that right?
Yeah. And I think once you start using it, then you can, as Lynne said, you pick up other opportunities to use it. And I think it can be really helpful to get you off that step.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's getting off the step that is the most difficult thing. So if I'm writing something or I'm looking at numbers, it's all I think, but what it will do is, if I ask it some good questions and give it some good information, it will get me off that step, and then I can rewrite it, put it in my own language, etc. But it's getting off that step which I find most helpful.
Love it. So Lindsey said there about, one tip, Lynne, is to, do something that use it for something that energizes you. What's your one tip that people can take away from this? One call to action.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, be curious. Don't be intimidated. Give it a bash. You can't break it. It's not going to. Think of something a problem you've got to solve. The first thing I ever did, if that helps, first thing I ever did was plan the holiday. So I went in and went tentatively put in saying, going to here and would like to do the following things. The next thing I had an itinerary, and I went, oh, hold on a minute. I'd like to eat at a restaurant. And suddenly you built this hours of Googling in a very, very short period of time. Yeah. So I would say, if you've got some event that you've got coming up or something that's quite benign that you want to, you'll discover very quickly the wealth of what it can do for you in a very short period of time. But don't 100% trust it.
No.
That's true. I'm using it for my daughter's hen do, because it's pulled back all the types of restaurants and things like that, brunch places, which then, it gives you a short list which you can then go on and research, which I think takes a hell of a lot of
I had
stress out of it.
My mum, who's got mobility issues, and said, with someone who's got mobility issues, with a dog, and it did it all. So something fun.
What a great place to leave it. So do something that energizes you and just have a bash at it.
Have a bash.
Great message. Thank you, both of you. Brilliant conversation, some great insights and some great advice. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.